It is a privilege to have experienced the power of Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but should have everlasting life. It is interesting that God extended his love through his Son. And he gave the opportunity to every man, woman, child, boy, or girl on this globe. The reality is that there is a life that comes through Jesus. The life that he comes to bring connects you with truth. Truth. Because we understand that God is light. And he is the true light. I'm here to tell you, without the Spirit of God, you do not have the truth of what is actually operating in this earth. It is only when the Spirit of God comes inside of your soul and he allows you to see something that you were not able to see before. He then extends to us his grace. Even if we reject him, even if we put him off to the side, even if we say no to him, we will be without excuse because he extended his love on Calvary. Very powerful, powerful expression of love. In the Bible, we read about the children of Israel, who was God's chosen people, who had been in slavery for 400 plus years. In the midst of them being in bondage, there was a great deliverer that God sent to deliver the children of Israel out of their bondage. When the children of Israel were delivered out of Egypt, at that point, they began to wander in what is called the wilderness. The wilderness is a powerful word because it really hits on the point of a word called will. The wilderness. And it's interesting because it is the will that God allows testing to be proven. When God created Adam and Eve, he placed them in the garden and he gave Adam specific instructions. And the specific instructions that he gave was to try their will. He told them to not eat of a certain tree, and he wanted to prove and test to see whether they would eat or not eat. We all know the story. He gave in and he ate of the forbidden fruit. But the reality is will. Somebody say will. When the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they came into a place where they came face to face with battles, wars, and attacks that they did not think that they would have to fight. Because they knew that once they would be delivered, that they would come into a place of blessing. But they did not know when they were delivered out of Egypt that they would then be placed in a place where they would have to come into a place of extensive warfare. Might I say today we may not fight the same battles of how they fought then, but please be aware that there is a battle against your will today. The enemy is now attacking the mind of humanity. It is interesting, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, God created them to only encamp the love for him. God created them to only encamp the mind and the knowledge for him. But when they bit of the forbidden fruit, notice what the tree was called: the knowledge of good and evil. Because the enemy knew that if he could put another thought within their mind, he could take them away from their relationship and their commitment to God. In fact, immediately when they ate, we see two curses that immediately came to pass. One of them was that the woman's desire would be for her husband, and he shall rule over thee. That's what it says. The other curse was for the man to work by the sweat of his brow. In other words, what takes place is now they are out of the presence of God and now they have a new thought. Relationship. Working. How am I going to survive? How can I make my relationship better? And the initial mind was of God. But the enemy wanted to attack the mind and get their focus off him, because he knew if he could take their focus off him, then he would gradually draw them further and further away in gross darkness. We are living in a day, and we are living in a world where we have created so many things that cater to man. Every job that you have, everything that you have, again, was created to cater a need for man. For man, not for God. In the fallen world that we are in, the reason why everything is created to tailor to man is because man lost his fellowship with God. So man no longer had the ability to see upward. They could only see themselves. And because of this, the enemy felt as if he had everything in his hand and in his grasp, because he redirected their focus. And we are living in a time today where the true battle is not your brother, it's not your sister, but it's the battle of the mind. Because the enemy, watch this, he speaks to your mind. A lot of the thoughts that you think are thoughts and ideas, might I say, are birth of the enemy. And it is our responsibility, watch this, to dwell in the presence of God and feed on the word of God, so we can recognize the voice of the enemy and is not lured asleep by his tactics. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. The mind is something powerful. In fact, go to Mark chapter 4. And this is where we will begin our study. Mark chapter 4. You know what? I like Matthew better. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13. This is something that I want everybody to see. Matthew chapter 13. Verse 15. And I ask whoever has the King James Bible, who has a King James Bible? Okay. Well, could I have you read, sir? I'm going to read Matthew chapter 13, verse 15.
Verse 15. For
yes,
these people's heart is become gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their hearts, and should be converted, and I should heal them.
The key word in that verse is understand. Somebody say understand.
Understand.
That is the mind. The enemy understands that it is the mind that is the birthplace of the spirit. Do you hear me very carefully? So initially, what the enemy tries to do is bombard the mind. This is what he did in Genesis. Because when they bit up the fruit, they had additional knowledge. Hear me. They had additional knowledge of good and evil. And the enemy wanted to bombard their mind with different thoughts, because he understood that if he could birth thoughts and suggestions within their mind, then he could taint their spirit. Hear me very carefully. Hear me very carefully. This is why today depression is so great. And we have these addictions, and we have these drugs, and we have jealousy, and the lust has increased in so great a degree because the enemy is after the mind. He tells us in verse 15 that and they should understand in their heart and shall be converted, and I shall heal them. So it comes with the understanding first. The understanding. It is important to understand what the enemy is after your mind.